Now let's quickly take your stance, Mrs. Ogoko, on the environment that should be created to ensure that such a program is implemented properly. Now, while some will say yes, it will be ideal to have a cafeteria and all of the nice infrastructure to ensure that children are fed properly and in a hygienic environment, we all know that these children will eat anyway. And the concern, whatever it is that they're eating, should in the very first instance should have been the concern of the federal government or the state government, where in the states where they are going to school. But that since this has not been put in place, shouldn't we welcome at all any idea that tries to ensure that enrollment of children increases and also children are able to get a meal regardless of their status when they're in school?
Yes, that should be our goal. But UNESCO released the statistics that we have 10.5 million children that are out of school, the highest of any country in the world. But the problem with Nigeria in particular is that we have gotten used to wasting resources. We should be aiming for sustainable development. Whatever is worth doing well. Don't start it until you're sure that you understand the implications, that you even have a fair idea of the implementation, and that there are policies and legal frameworks that would ensure that that program continues. As I said, this program failed at some point. When you took it up, the aim and the goal should have been to do it better.
Failed at what point precisely?
2005 it stopped. It was stopped. But because of some pitfalls, it's an initiative of the PDP. At some point it stopped. APC came up and took it up. And to be honest, to be fair, I would say, and this is my own opinion, that they took it up for the purpose of fanfare to show that they're feeding children, but they really didn't think about the implementation. She made some assertions. Children in primary 1 to primary 3 are fed, and the others from primary 4 to primary 6 are not fed. That is huge.
I did say initially that this could get political, but then should we really be putting politics in the feeding of our children? The reason why I'm putting this question across, you just said that the United Nations talked about us having the largest out-of-school children, 10.5 million. It's not going to differentiate whether their parents voted for the PDP
absolutely
or
not.
The APC.
But I'm looking at you. I want you to look at it. I want you to put it in the context of sustainable development. You want these children to go back to school. Did you follow any research? An institute gave a research and told you what to do well. You want them to go back and you're feeding them. Haven't you heard the reports that some students go to school to eat the food and they go back? Do you think the reason why they were not going to school was because of food? Was that why they didn't go? You said you're setting up a social welfare scheme. If this social welfare scheme was taken to the families, the children would have meal. All the children would have meal to eat. Do you know the level of discrimination of giving some kids food in the same school and some are not eating? A school in Zamfara, again, I go back to Zamfara, the child was complaining that his brother in primary 3 was eating and he wasn't eating. Can you imagine them coming from this family where they both haven't eaten? They come to the school and the brother in JS3 is eating and he in SS1 is not eating.
And he's all secondary school.
The primary schools, yes. The brother in primary 3 or whatever is eating, and then he's not eating.
Don't you think that should
that's discriminatory?
Shouldn't it challenge the state governors then? Because we also see that the federal government implemented this in phases. They were a little. I'm not making any excuses. I'm sure Mrs. Adesome can talk about how they started the program. But what we've seen as observers is that they started the program in phases.
Yeah.
It didn't start
2017 when we were in recession. They knew that the state government didn't have the funding.
Just a moment. It didn't start immediately. In fact, the only time we saw that some states went ahead of the federal government was in Kaduna State, where they felt we're not going to wait for the federal government to start this program. We will start it. And it was seen that the federal government was then challenged to at least show that it was going to really start this
In August 2017, they stopped because of remittances, because the monies were not remitted. Kaduna State government stopped the school feeding. And when you have those breaks, you feed me today, tomorrow I go to school hungry, hoping that you're going to feed me. And these were in the recommendations of the Nigerian Institute Research Organization. They said you have to look into all these problems. These were the problems why it was stopped the first time. You didn't consider all these frameworks and you just jumped in. You have children who are eating and some are not eating. But that's discriminatory. But let's focus on the fact that people are eating in their classrooms, on their tables. It shouldn't happen.
Mrs. Ogoko, I want to come in here because you're coming in, of course, to speak on the issues, but you're also a member of a political party, and you're representing your political party here today.
Absolutely.
I want to be very clear. You mentioned that this the school feeding program was a PDP baby, if you will.
Yes.
But that it was stopped for approximately 10 or more years.
Yes.
Now, these issues you brought up when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to getting children back in school, they wouldn't have started from 2015. They would have started well before then. So the question I want to ask is, moving forward now, how if we know that kind of in the north in particular, where parents need a little bit more incentive to get their children into school, some value added so that they can understand there's value there, why would not feeding them be a better alternative than feeding some?
I think we should feed them. I agreed with you that is a good program. Feeding nutrition is a very good program. But how you do it is very important.
No, what you said earlier was that it should be cancelled, in fairness.
Yeah, it should be, because of the health and safety issues. Because you don't have, you know, she said that they never provided boreholes, and most of the schools do not have boreholes, and we know that that is what the situation is. Who is monitoring even the people who are cooking? Because usually, I went to Freedom School, as I said, the food was cooked in the school environment, and you could monitor, you know, the hygiene level. These are people who are cooking in their homes and bringing to schools. What do you know that they're doing? Nothing. We need to review it. We need to stop it, review it, and hopefully in 2019 start something that is well thought out and planned. This will not just work. It's going to stop. You have people who are being fed and some are not being fed. You have people who are fed for under 17 naira. Have you seen the food that they're feeding them? It's all watery. I don't know what they're... I think my dog eats better, to be honest.
Mrs.
Ogoko, you know, I would implore that, you know, because of course this is food that children are eating. Yeah. Much as we want, you know, it to be better, I'd say that we should also, you know, try and not paint a very gory picture.
No, what is that?
Let us also look at the fact that, you know, yes, hygiene is extremely important. Let us look at the fact that, you know, the quality of the food that the children are eating is also extremely important. But then when you look at the criticism that you have put forward so far, they say that it's not like as if there is no water. There is water. It might not be borehole. To the credit of the federal government, we haven't heard that our, you know, children were poisoned as a result of the food that they were fed.
We haven't had any evaluation report either, so you don't know. They could be poisoned and you don't know.
So it is possible that maybe we haven't heard, but my point right now is that so far so good. We have not heard that maybe children in a classroom took ill out of the, you know, as a result of
You don't know because you don't have the statistics. They will be falling ill, eating on their desk in their class.
Just a moment. My point right now is that could be happening.
Yes.
But we haven't heard it.
It is happening.
And I want to believe that if such a thing should happen, by now it would have been picked up. Doesn't that show that despite the fact that there is no, you know, the infrastructure might not be perfect, that some concern have actually been given to sanitation?
But let's even look at the point. These kids are not out of school because they weren't fed. They are not out of school because in most of the schools you don't have basic infrastructure. You don't have tables for them to sit down. I sent some pictures to Chamberlain. They're seated on the ground. Imagine a child coming. It's so inconveniencing. Most of these kids come to school and the teachers are not there because the teachers are not well paid. Kaduna State had a high you know, turnout of pupils because he offered free education. These funds, 6 billion or whatever they have expended on this school feeding program, would have been put towards probably giving free education for children. That would drive them to go back to school. Don't get into something that is not well thought out and you're telling it's not going to have any long-term impact.
That's definitely a